it's a tough thing to go out after lunch. It's even much tougher going after former Miss Earth here. So we're delighted to lead this delivery. My name is Scott Williams. I'm the Vice President here at MChem Shanghai. And we're probably the largest chamber in Asia Pacific and the second or third largest in the world. And we have a great membership. It's very vibrant. We have one of our members who's very active in this topic in the Environmental Committee. He's the chair of our Environmental Committee, and many of you know Mike. But I want to have Mike Rosenthal stand up and be recognized. Mike is the chair of our Environmental Committee. Very, very important position, particularly when we're talking about topics like today, and it's big conversations about green and not having waste, but having things be recycled. In fact, that is a perfect segue into our next speaker. I'm going to introduce Mike Biddle. I have the opportunity to do that, and I'm very delighted. And his topic, if you look at the agenda, is on zero waste solutions, which is a great topic. Mike is the CEO of Material Solutions. He owns a number of different companies, and I'll have him explain more about that. But Material Solutions is one of the, I think it's the largest, world's largest polymer recycling company. Mike's business has offices in different parts of the world, including here locally in China, in Guangzhou, in Austria, and also in the UK. Mike is based in the Bay Area, just outside of San Francisco, in Walnut Creek, California. And we're very, very lucky to have Mike because he has a very busy travel schedule. He's on demand in multiple locations on this very key topic. And so it's a great, great delight to introduce to all of you, Mike Biddle. Thank you.
Well, it's too hard ask to follow now. Thank you, Doug, for setting me up like that. That's no fair. So I'm gonna talk today about how we can get to zero waste solutions with plastics. And just a quick correction, it's MBA Polymers. It's the largest plastics recycler in the world for plastic and end-of-life durable goods like computers, electronics, and automobiles, and that's my previous company, Material Solutions. And I'll talk about all of those in a moment. So we're supposed to be having a big conversation. So a big conversation suggests big questions and big answers. So I'm going to try to answer 4 questions very quickly for you today. Why are we here? Where are we? Where do we want to go? And most importantly, how do we get there? So big question number 1. Why are we here? I'm going to let a favorite comedian of mine maybe suggest why we're here today. How many of you know George Carlin? It's an age test. You have to be pretty old to know George. Here we go. I don't think that was George's.
It's a self-proof. The planet will be here for a long, long, long time after we're gone, and it will heal itself, it will cleanse itself, because that's what it does. It's a self-correcting system. The air and the water will recover, the earth will be renewed, and if it's true that plastic is not degradable, well, the planet will simply incorporate plastic into a new paradigm, the earth plus plastic. The earth doesn't share our prejudice towards plastic. Plastic came out of the earth. The earth probably sees plastic as just another one of its children. It could be the only reason the earth allowed us to be formed from it in the first place. It wanted plastic for itself. It didn't know how to make it. It does. Could be the answer to our age-old philosophical question, why are we here? Plastic.
So I think we are here because of plastics, but maybe not in the sense that George talked about. So why am I talking to you today? Well, I'm wearing a number of hats, but what I want to talk to you about is how do we make plastics realize its promise of delivering a circular economy. And one hat, I've already mentioned, MBA Polymers, was a company I founded 22 years ago. It now recycles around 300 million pounds a year of plastic from end-of-life computers, electronics, automobiles, and sells it right back to the same types of companies. Material Solutions is a company I founded after that to help people realize value from their waste streams and also how to incorporate plastics into new products, recycled plastics. And I just joined a venture capital firm called Evoke. And our mission is to invest in startup companies trying to solve some of our biggest environmental problems. And one of the biggest ones we're tackling is trying how to get CO2 out of the atmosphere. You heard Steve Davies talk about doing it and making plastics. And we're investing in startup companies that are figuring literally how to suck CO2 out of our atmosphere and turn it into products and not back into CO2. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why I care about that to start off. Look, and I'm going to start at a very high level. Now this is just so you think I might be smart. I actually don't remember what that relates to, but it has something to do with this type of curve, exponential growth. So I'm going to talk about exponential growth and its impact on us. This is one that you're probably very familiar with. We're living in a more and more crowded space, and for those of you at CHINAPLAS earlier this week, you certainly felt this, right? And it's not only getting more wee bit crowded for us, it's getting wee bit crowded for the other inhabitants that we share the planet with. This is what's happening with species extinction. And if you look at if you put those two curves on top of each other, you might think there's some relation between human population growth and species extinction. Oops. I guess I'm an entrepreneur. You're always looking for silver linings or opportunities. And this isn't one I have in mind, but I guess if Noah builds another ark in the future, it doesn't have to be quite as big if we go through a sixth extinction. That's not the type of silver lining I look for. But at least we have a security blanket. It's albeit rather invisible, particularly to certain US politicians, namely CO2. So there's another exponential growth that we're experiencing. And again, our earlier speakers have talked about this and the impact it's having on us. And of course, one of the impacts it's having is warming the global temperature. More exponential growth. More importantly, and I think many of us are here today because we're worried about the health of our oceans from many different dimensions. And if you're worried about plastics in the oceans, you ought to be worried even more about the heat content of the oceans. The only reason that the surface temperature of the planet hasn't increased more is because a lot of the heat's been pumped into the oceans, and that's having pretty dramatic effects on all levels of sea life. So this is a big problem. This is a huge problem. So where are we? Where are we with respect to climate? Well, we're in deep. Oops. In fact, the UN and leading scientists are suggesting we're going to have to do some seriously deep decarbonization of our planet if we want to have a future for our children. Just to have a better than 50% chance of staying within the 2-degree temperature increase target, we need to decrease CO2 emissions by more than 50%. And that's only a 50% chance of staying at the 2-degree mark. What does that mean? Well, this is what has to happen in the next 35 years, country by country. This is how much CO2 emissions have to go down. And if you put that on a GDP level, there has to be a 90% reduction, 90% reduction in the amount of carbons emitted per GDP for all major emitting countries. How many in this room think that's actually going to happen? I'm a technologist. I believe in technology. I can't imagine how we're going to achieve that, and scientists would agree. Most scientists in the world are now believing we're probably more on target for a 3.5 to 4 degree warming, and that has significant consequences, particularly for cities like Shanghai on the coast, coastal cities worldwide, and many other dimensions. So I'm not here to speak to you about the impact of CO2, but I will come back to why I mentioned this as being, I think, the most serious problem we all face if we care about the future of humans on this planet. So where are we with respect to resources? So let's drill down a little bit more into why we're here. Well, many people believe we're going to see a resource crunch. It doesn't feel like that today because commodity prices have really crashed in the last year or two, but I think that's just a temporary phenomenon. That's my personal opinion, and I think of many others. McKinsey believes that it's an economic imperative that we solve energy, material, water, and food resource solutions, and even military organizations are worried about resource scarcity driving conflict and wars in the future. What's driving that? It's not so much that first graph that I showed, the population, that's the fundamental driver, but more importantly, McKinsey and others believe there's going to be about 3 billion new middle-class consumers coming on the planet just in the next 15 years. Kind of doubling the amount of middle-class consumers. And of course, they're going to want all the things that we take for granted sitting in this room, all the toys and all the things we take for granted to make our lives easier. Just one metric, they project an 80% requirement in steel demand in that time period. They believe it's $1 trillion per year problem, or if you're an entrepreneur like me, investment opportunity to solve these problems, to meet those demands on resources. So I think we all in this room appreciate what the implications, the financial and environmental consequences of resource depletion. It gets harder to find resources, it's harder to extract them from the earth, which means costs go up in general over time. And this is for metals and ores. This is from the U.S. Geological Service. And a lot of that gap has been made up in the metal sector by recycling. So if you just look at steel, for example, the overall rate for steel recycling has gone up another exponential growth. You see a common theme. This is a good exponential growth, by the way. And the steel industry is rightly proud of that they believe they have a very recyclable material. So finally, let's come to plastics. That's why we're here today. The orange line you see is the relative growth rate of plastics since the 1970s. And those two lines far below are that for steel and paper. And this graph, I think, puts it in perspective even more so. The bottom part of the graph that you see here, this is the growth rate of plastics worldwide, is for Europe. You'd have a similar, if you put on top of that a similar area of blue for North America, and the rest is mostly generated right here in China. So most of the recent growth, and probably growth into the future, is coming from right here, this part of the world. And we don't expect this to be slowing down. People have talked about the low recovery rates for plastic. This is the US, this is probably the lowest in the world. Well, less than 10% of plastics are recovered. And these figures are even distorted to some extent because it's just collected, put in a bale, and shipped overseas, which is what I'm going to talk about in a moment. That's counted as recycle. Every pound of that is counted as recycling, and only maybe 50 to 80% of that is typically recyclable. Where does it end up? Well, some of it is recycled domestically. The most complicated, difficult to recycle places, materials are often shipped to developing parts of the world, including parts here in China, where that material is typically hand sorted. And they do a pretty good job. I mean, there's whole cities that have developed around harvesting value from these materials. And what they normally recover are the same things we recover domestically in our MRFs, material recovery facilities, numbers, peat, mostly polyethylene and PT, because humans and machines can easily recognize these materials. A large part of the rest of the plastics that are in those bales, and again, the most complicated stuff is sent over there, so these are the most complicated material streams, often ends up disposed of in ways that we would find unacceptable, often in streams. And you see this all over the developing parts of the world, and all they're trying to do, these aren't bad people, they're just trying to earn a living, and they don't really have any alternative. This is the local waste disposal at their means. This is all they have available to them. And in fact, it's done deliberately in some parts of the world, and you might say, oh my gosh, how could they dump plastics intentionally in the riverbeds? Well, the reason they do it is rivers are self-cleaning. If you dump it there one day, it's gone the next, so you can keep dumping there. It just disappears. It's their version of NIMBY, not in my backyard. And again, I'm not faulting the people doing this. It's the waste management that they have available to them in their communities. We know where that plastic ends up. A lot of people in this room, including Doug and his team, have done fantastic work on following this plastic from freshwater streams into our oceans, and I don't have to tell you the implications on marine life. to plastics ending up in the oceans. I'm going to let a person do it much better than me. This is a filmmaker from here in China. I had the privilege of meeting Wang Junlang last year. He produced a film called Beijing, Besieged by Waste. And now he's in the process of producing a film called Plastics China. I've seen 30 minutes of that film. It's still being produced. You're going to see just a couple of minutes right here to give you a flavor for what the film's about. We have the sound.
最大的一个感受跟土地之间的关系。你比如春天当机器刚把土地翻出来的那种泥土的清香气息，真的是非常非常微妙的一种感觉。然后我的个人信仰的写作品完全基于我奶奶小时候跟我讲的这个故事的故事。那天我非常着迷，是吧？整个夏天我躺在凉席上，望着星空，听着奶奶讲那些人生的故事。因为是在巴黎，是吧？天然的空调，所以到毕业之后，我就特别想的是影视化、摄影手段，把我奶奶给我讲的故事视觉化。所以我也到处寻找这种跟我拍摄的场景。但是我对艺术家讲已经截然不同的样子，对吧？也是现在工业文明的所谓的火速的中国，那也就是第二满地都是垃圾，那种农药包装啊。所以垃圾为什么之后依然放弃了这种所谓的艺术创作，或者说那种非现实世界的题材转而面这种东西。在这个现实世界里行走，那种超现实的景象是无处非常顺，而且如此之密集，是吧？平均从1公里500公里一个，这是第二个位。当你进入到了中山居民区学院的时候，他们说我们的水平现在不够。如果是垃圾微场这个项目是在谈中国国内的垃圾问题。你发现还有一大块根本不是很深，或者是大家没有比较深入的审核，那就是国外的这个技术处理。而这一块量是非常非常大的。有一个不太严格的公约叫巴塞尔公约，它是禁止这种危险或者是其他的废弃物，就是像什么垃圾的一个跨越。而实际上，它中国的很大的垃圾就是不允许进口，不允许出口的时候。到中国之后，无论是什么样的垃圾，低电垃圾、建筑垃圾、塑料垃圾、纸垃圾，都是经过最原始的手工关系，没有机械化。中国联想到东西有的是靠人的手工关系，在中国发展的过程中，直接到供应商那儿写的这些货品、政府或者家庭的成本，不是我们允许。那么在从塑料或者东西抛弃过程中产生的水污，这是这个地方整个区域及第二中间的第二水说严重污染，而不能引。你要知道，中国已经是直营第二世界。世界范围内的垃圾废流传到中国呢，就有两个原因。第一，中国作为最大的廉价商品生产国，它有旺盛的这个需求，这是第一点。第二，一个相对低下的环境保护的门槛，或者环境保护的标准。如果说加不上环境成本，你再去发现这个所谓的资料回收的时候，成本一点为什么不在中国进行生产？为什么不在日本、不在中国就是没有环境成本在里面？如果超过了，或者说跟美国、日本持平了，那么很明显，日本的垃圾不到中国。但这个后果就是，那我觉得可能比过垃圾生产，它自己要处理这个垃圾。我不认为这是一个基于全球的一个所谓的合法贸易产生的一个合理的这个道理，不是很实的。所以我现在的追求 plastic 它一个表象的繁荣，内在其实有问题。表面上可能是说的很漂亮，而实际上内在是。
A film's due to be released later this year. I don't have an exact date. He's still working on the editing of it. But I think it tells a human side of the story. He spends time with families, he spends time with the people managing those companies. And again, they're not bad people, they're trying to earn a living. They're actually trying to do what many of us in this room are trying to do, which is get value from waste and stop looking at it as a waste, turn into resource. But they just don't have the tools or knowledge to do it in ways to protect themselves or their local ecosystems. And so that's what I think many in this room would like to help change. So I don't think this is what any of us want for recycling, even the people doing it. They want to earn a living. They want to do, again, what we're trying to do, get value from waste. But, sorry, we can do better. So the plastic in the ocean problem, and seems like you saw in this film, and that we all know about, which is probably why many of us are in this room today, have created a backlash to the plastics industry. There's probably, I've tracked about 60 NGOs throughout the world that have some campaign against plastics. And I think their heart's in the right place, their head's not necessarily in the right place. There's people that want to teach you how to live without plastic. She's actually from my neck of the woods in Berkeley, California. You can go plastic free. There's how-to books to go plastic free. Or there's instructions on how to end your relationship with plastic. And that's the easy go-to solution, right? You see plastic in your screen, you see it on the street, you see these horrible pictures of people trying to process it without really the know-how. Of course, this is why wouldn't you want to go this direction? But I have to ask you, would ending your relationship with plastic be a good thing? Is that a good idea? I think not. And it's not, I'm a little biased, okay? I've spent over 30 years in the plastics industry, so I will admit my bias up front. But I do it, and I continue to do it because I believe it's an amazing material as long as we manage its end of life. And I'm going to come back to that. So these are some of the advantages to using plastic in automobiles. You see why automobile manufacturers are using plastic. It's not because they're trying to make the cars cheaper, they're trying to make them more efficiently. Plastics delivers performance in one of the most efficient ways. If you switch to other materials, this is the environmental and resource prices you would have to pay to use non-plastics. Now, okay, you say, okay, automotive is easy because fuel economy, I get it. I get why plastics have a huge benefit. Well, what many of us are here talking about, and I think Doug's thing tomorrow is about packaging. So what about packaging? So if we went from packaging to the next most logical material, we'd have big weight penalties, we'd have big energy penalties, and we'd have significant greenhouse gas penalties. So what I'm telling you is that's going the wrong way. And that's why I started with the whole thing on CO2. That's why I started my discussion today with CO2 and climate change being the issue of our lifetime, in my opinion. You may not agree with me. I suspect many of you do agree with me. If I was in America, I might have less of you agreeing with me, but plastics are helping us in that regard. They help us enormously on what I think the biggest issue facing. So where are we? Well, plastics have become ubiquitous. It's everywhere. I would argue for good environmental and economic reasons. There's increasing demand on resources that's likely going to drive up the resource costs in the long term. Again, we're in a trough right now, but I think that's for global economic reasons. Recycling of plastic lags behind other major material categories, and plastics in the ocean specifically has become a focal point and emotional catalyst for anti-plastic sentiment in the world. Understandable, very understandable. And so the public has become increasingly unclear what is the role of plastic in their lives. Is it a good thing, is it a bad thing? I used to start out conferences, how many in the room think plastic in your life is a good thing, and how many think it's a bad thing? Depending on the conference I was at, it's usually more hands, it's a bad thing. And I think that's just because of those pictures that I showed earlier, not because they understand the performance that it delivers. So where do we want to go? Well, I want to see plastics being one of the coolest materials on the planet again. When I started in the plastics industry, it was the coolest material on the planet. I think it still is. But we've got an issue with plastics and end of life. We've got some serious issues with plastics and end of life, in my opinion. So I want to continue to enjoy all those fantastic benefits, environmental and economic, that plastic delivers. And I think the only way to do that, the only way to be able to keep using this material and enjoy those benefits and keep our greenhouse gas emissions, we have to reduce, remember that one early chart, we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions per unit of GDP by 90% in the next 35 years to give us a 50% chance of staying within that 2-degree temperature increase. We can't be going the other way. So, how do we do that? Finally, strategy. How do we get there? Well, it all starts with responsible waste management, and many of the earlier speakers have spoke to this. What do I mean by that? Well, you start by looking at waste differently. It's not waste. I still think it boggles my mind that we call this stuff that we put in a bin waste. It's resources. It's materials. It's resources. It's energy. It's materials. So I think we ought to be talking about responsible resource management. So we have to collect and aggregate more plastics. We have to, and you wouldn't have seen me put this up 5 or 10 years ago, but I've become a believer now. I think there's a role for biodegradable plastics and products that are not likely to be collected. We have to recycle more, and that's what I'm here to talk about. And I think energy recovery and waste to fuels plays a key role in the stuff that's not either biodegradable or recyclable. And that's how you get to a zero waste economy and a circular economy. So how do we do that? Why do I think recycling is so important? Again, other speakers have spoke to this, so I'll go through this very quickly. There's an 80 to 90% energy savings using recycled plastics versus making it new. That's huge. 2 to 4 tons of CO2 savings, depending on which plastic you're talking about. That's huge. I hope you become a believer in my earlier charts. We've got to keep enjoying these CO2 benefits. It keeps it out of harmful places. It can be good business, I'm here to tell you. And it gives a social license to continue using plastics. Because I think the public rightly believes that the social contract that any manufacturer, whether it be a good or a material, that social contract should be responsible management of whatever they're introducing into society. So how do we do a better job? Let's learn from other materials, and let's learn from the best practices of existing recyclers. So this is how cars used to be recycled. Technology came along, now we shred cars and we put them through mini mills. And that's why steel has such a high recycling rate that I showed earlier. Metals enjoy very high recycling rates. And I believe plastics recycling is going to follow a similar path, already is on the same path as steel recycling. So this is from Harvard professor Clayton Christensen. He wrote some very famous books called Innovators Solution, Innovators Dilemma, and he uses the steel mini mill recycling model of how steel recycling disrupted the virgin steel industry. So they started off making, at the lower left was rebar, very low quality recycled steel products, and they worked their way over decades up to higher and higher quality. And now you can't tell when you buy a car, it's got more recycled steel in it than virgin steel. Anything you buy with steel in it will have more recycled steel in it than virgin steel. It's just the way steel is made today. I think plastics is following the same trajectory for the same reasons. So it started off with plastic lumber, and then lower quality applications, lower pots and bins, hitting the low demanding parts, and now we're seeing, and you've heard from Dell, using 38% recycled plastic in its products. You're seeing major products using recycled plastics in very demanding applications. So same pathway, same trajectory. If you want to learn more about what we can learn about from steel, I wrote an article that was published in The Guardian, so I'll give anyone that's interested a link to that article. So let's look at how do we take that very low, relatively low recycling plastic rate? How do we fix that? Why is it so doggone low? If this material is so valuable, and by the way, it's anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5, even higher, more valuable than steel. So why is the recycling rate for plastic so low compared to steel? It's not because it's not valuable. It's because it's hard. It's hard to recycle plastics. So here's how we used to do recycling. I lived in Germany for a while, and I used to have to march my recyclables down to the end of the street, put them in bins, And then the Canadians came up with the blue bin concept. I don't know if they were the first ones. I think we have a few Canadians in there. This one right there. Came up with the blue bin approach, so it made it easier, but you still had to segregate. Still required on each of us segregating it into each bin. And now, at least in most parts of the US and I think in Europe, I honestly have no idea about here in Shanghai. Oops, I'm having trouble with this, I'm sorry. We put it, it's called single bin. So we put all of our recyclables, anything that's recyclable, paper, glass, metal, plastics, all in one bin. And the reason it's so easy for us now to do recycling in the US is because of the advent of the invention of the MRF, material recovery facilities. Automated and human recycling activities take place in these very large facilities and they sort through the various recyclable commodities. Plastics in most of these MRFs get sorted into PET-rich streams and polyethylene-rich streams, and some MRFs are now doing polypropylene, so 3 of the biggest types of plastics. They will ship bales of enriched, these bales are usually 80 to 85% pure of that one material. They then go on to recyclers because that has to be cleaned up substantially before you can use it again. And that can either be shipped overseas to recyclers or domestic. And then those recyclers create recycled pellets typically that they then either sell domestically or ship overseas to customers. And then their byproducts are either waste to energy or landfill, typically. This is typical. And there's many variations on this thing, but this is the most common thing. The MRF then has what's called mixed plastic residue that doesn't fit in one of these 3 categories, and that's largely the type of plastic that ends up in places like the pictures that I showed. And then hand sorting takes place. There is some mixed plastic recycling happening in the US, for example, but it's still the majority of the very difficult complex mixture streams are shipped overseas, or landfill, or waste energy. Now, I'm a recycler. I've been doing this for 25 years of my life. When I look at this chart, there's only one type of company making money in this chart. Who is that? It's not the MRF. It's not the recycler. Where's all the lines? Where's all the activity? It's moving stuff around, right? It's the haulers. That's not good for economics, and it's not good for the planet either. So, the future, I believe, I'm going to propose, is touch it once and move on. That's a recycler's creep. Every time you touch something, if you're a recycler, or any type of, even a manufacturer, the more times you touch something, the more expensive it is. So, we're still going to collect it the same way because that works so well, but we're going to send mixed plastics to a single facility instead of doing the sorting in the MRF. It's going to be all the plastics, just like the paper goes to paper recyclers. That facility will produce 5 or 6 or 7 products, so you get a higher recycling rate, fewer touches, and that yellow facility can be much, much larger, so you get economies of scale, because it's got larger material to work with. And each of those facilities can then send their residual to energy recovery, because they have more to work with and it's a more viable product for an energy recovery facility. So this type of scheme is more efficient, and therefore it's more financially attractive, and therefore plastics will be more sustainable. So in summary, I call this robust recycling. I mean robust from both an environmental standpoint and a business standpoint. It reduces the handling and transport costs, which again is good for economics, but it's also good for CO2 emissions, as you might imagine. Lowers the capital and operating costs, CapEx and OpEx. You can get larger volumes from each source, which makes it easier to manage, makes your business more secure. You get access to a wider customer base because it's now, instead of just making PET or just making polyethylene, you've got 5 or 6 products you're making as a company. So you're not subject to the whims of that one commodity. And it enables business to scale, and that's probably the most important, is the scale. That's why virgin plastics is so doggone cheap, because they're huge. They enjoy huge economies of scale, and they enjoy all of these streamlined upstream benefits. So we have to do the same for recycling. We have to streamline the whole value chain, and we have to get to the economies of scale. And so just really quickly on the economies of scale, I think everybody knows, typically lower CapEx, lower OpEx, access to larger customers and markets. Oops, sorry, this is pretty thin. And your inbound and outbound transport will be more efficient. So the question I get asked a lot, why should we believe this would work? why hasn't this, why do we do it the way we do it? Why do we have all these little recyclers spread out throughout the world that are monostream recyclers, the PET, the polyethylene, etc.? Well, I've lived it, I've built it, and I've seen it operate. So I'll let CNN tell you about that. Can we have the sound, please? Can we turn it up a little?
Our mobile phones, our computers, our cars, what happens to them when they become obsolete? We upgrade to the latest model. Extracting metals is relatively easy. Getting them.
I don't think they like CNN here. Well, I'm hoping that they'll fix it quite earlier. This is not an advertisement for MBA Polymers. I'm more or less talking about this because I've demonstrated what I just talked about at a very large scale with the most complex waste plastic stream in the world. So MBA Polymers UK processes auto shredder residue, which is an extremely complex mixture of plastics and other materials, and also household waste and electronics waste, all through one plant, same technology, same facility. So it enjoys economies of scale, it enjoys access to very large feed streams, and it makes 5 different types of products, probably soon to be 6 different types of products out of one facility. That's unheard of in the plastics recycling world. And because of all those, it can operate more efficiently than a traditional plastics recycler. It gets to enjoy the benefits of scale, it gets to enjoy all the other benefits I alluded to. And I'm hoping that CNN did a nice documentary on it. We can actually see the plant running. It's a 4-minute video. If not, I'll just give you links to it. And maybe while they're trying to get the video to work, I can just open it up for questions, since I was just going to end with the video. So, are there any questions? A couple over here. We have a microphone. Yeah.
You're talking about economic scale. That means we might have to ship those waste, either recyclable waste plastic or all kinds of recyclable material, from long distance to that facility. So if we can footprint through the transportation, it's still environmentally feasible. Another quick question is about the assumption. You said it's economically feasible. So you're talking about only mixed plastic or mixed recyclable materials?
Okay, thank you. Both those are really good questions. So, the first question, actually, I tried to answer your question. So, what we do today, what most recyclers do today, is they take some fraction of what they process, what a MRF does, some small fraction, a PET fraction, a polyethylene fraction, a polypropylene fraction, and they ship that long distance to a monostream recycler, so a PET recycler, a polyethylene recycler, a polypropylene recycler. That's what happens today. So the distance issue is much worse because that recycler has to get streams from many MRFs in order to have even a small economies of scale. If you can build a plant where you can keep it all mixed together so the volume is much bigger, you don't have to have as many shipments to the same recycling facility. So I try to make that point. It's a good question, and that's partly what this tries to solve. So you don't have to ship it so far because you're shipping everything, all the mixed plastics, just to one facility instead of a little bit here, a little bit there. Your second question, what MBA does and what I'm proposing is not make mixed plastics, it separates the plastics into different types and grades. So the plant that I hope we get to see the video makes polyethylene, polypropylene, filled polypropylene, ABS, and high-impact polystyrene. It makes 5 products and different grades of those products and different colors of those grades, so many different products, but 5 material classes out of just one very large stream of material.
With only these 5 types of plastics.
Oh, there's more than those 5 types of plastics in there. Those are the 5 most predominant plastics. So,
that means the higher percentage is this 5 type.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be purely these 5 types.
Well, they're all mixed. So all of those plastics are mixed in different grades, different colors, and then we separate them out by type, and even by grade, and even by
So
color.
still using similar online screening or sorting technology?
It's all done automated.
Okay.
Yeah, and that technology exists. It's not just MBA's. I wish I could say it was just MBA's technology today, but that technology is now. So that's the other thing that's happened. Technology's come available to allow sorting of multiple material streams.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've spoken about the technology and the actually mixing once the collection occurs, but I think one of the issues that certainly I was experiencing from time in London is that certain boroughs of London have certain contracts with CETA and Veolia and all these things, and actually recycling boils down to the least sexy part of it, and that is actually getting the plastic bottles into the right bins. How are you guys working with these contractors to sort of increase collection, also unify across even a postcode how things are collected?
Okay, so I answered the question. It looks like you're going to have it teed up. Very good question. Thank you. In fact, I was going to bring it up if someone didn't ask that question. So that is the number one barrier left to tackle. So when a MRF, when a waste management signs an agreement with London, and maybe it's CETA in your case, signs an agreement with the City of London, they want a 10 to 20 year agreement that they get all of that waste. So when I go, and I'm looking at Larry, because I've had many discussions with waste management over here, so when I go to waste management, I say, well, you have 10 and 20 year agreements for your supply. I'd be happy with a 5-year agreement for supply, because then I can go to the bank and get $10 to $20 million loan to build these plants. And all of the waste companies, not just waste management, every one of them says, oh no, we don't do that. We trade. We never sign long-term agreements with our customers. That's the fundamental problem. I guarantee you, you solve that problem, it won't just be MBA plants, there'll be a lot of other operators out there recycling mixed plastics, because you have to have access. It's all about access to the stream. Let's see, can you roll it? Because I think you'll find it interesting, I hope. And sound. Thank you.
Our mobile phones, our computers, our cars, what happens to them when they become obsolete if we upgrade to the latest model? Extracting metals is relatively easy. Getting the plastics out, the more valuable plastics, is much, much harder. But one man is on a mission to change all that. Dr. Mike Biddle is a 58-year-old chemical engineer from California. He spent the last 25 years developing ways of recycling second-hand plastic.
Our mission was figuring out how to mine plastics from the largest waste streams in the world.
In the industry, he's known as the garbage man.
Today, we're recycling less than 10% of the world's plastics. Most of them are in complex mixtures of waste and hard to separate from that mixture. So I decided to try to solve that problem.
The idea came to him while working for the American company Dow Chemical in the early 1990s.
They literally told me we didn't hire a PhD in polymer science and engineering to work on garbage.
So Biddle decided to go and do some prospecting on his own.
So what we have to be able to do is figure out, okay, why are these plastics different? So what we've done is exploit the reasons they don't like each other on a molecular scale, forcing the materials to separate reliably each and every time. And that's why it took 20 years to do it.
His factory in the northeast of England has been operating for 3 years. It's the most sophisticated plant of its kind on the planet. Fully automated, production 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, over 30 processes used to isolate 75 tons of the prized plastic every day. Biddle's company, MBA Polymers, has plants in Austria and China, all producing the same product from mounds of plastic waste.
So this is a bag of our finished goods. It's about 1 ton. And it's the
Currency of the plastics industry, plastic pellets. And this is worth a couple of $1,000. Biddle refers to it as the circular economy, recycling all the parts you can and using the rest in energy production.
We sell to Fortune 100 companies in the electronics, appliance industry, automobile industry, home furnishings, because if they harvest the materials from their end-of-life products, they have low cost and reliable feedstock for their new products.
And for the garbage man, there's no better feeling than seeing his plastic back on the shelves.
When I see a product made from our recycled plastic, I guess the best word is to say I feel fulfilled. Because it's been a hunger inside of me for more than 20 years. And to see it sitting in a store and knowing that our company made that happen, I can't think of a more rewarding feeling. Doug, we have time for questions. Or do we need to? So I'm happy to provide you with some more information on what it is that technology delivers and why today now you can recycle very complex streams at very large scale and bring all the benefits that I talked about to bear on this problem we're all facing. We just have to get the waste companies to play along because they own these long-term contracts. All right.